All right. If everyone's ready, we start.
Yep.
Hi everyone. We're back again with another conversation with two really influential people in the toy, gaming, and play industry. I'm Venkat. I'm the co-founder at Luma World.
I'm Sajid. I'm another co-founder at Luma World.
And we have with us today Shraddha Jain and Shweta Chari, virtually, unfortunately, because of the times. And I'm going to leave it to them to introduce themselves, and then we can begin with this awesome talk. Really excited.
Hey everyone, it's nice to be here. It's so weird when it's all digital because it's so hard to be yourself 100%. But favorite topic, so it all makes sense. Looking forward to this conversation and sharing the last 15, 16 years of amazing play stuff that we've done for our kids. Looking forward to this conversation, guys.
Hi everyone, I'm Shraddha. I'm the founder of Studio Clockworks, and currently I teach game design at a design school in Bangalore, in India. I've been in my play journey since last almost a decade now, and it just started off with few simple grid games, traditional games, and now I'm open about the digital and analog side of game sport. So we'll get to learn more about this in this talk.
Thanks. I think Shweta missed a small part in her introduction, which is she runs an NGO or a not-for-profit organization called toybank.org, where they set up toy libraries in all across India and even internationally, I think, which empowers and enables children to get playtime, especially in low socioeconomic places.
I think both
Thank
Shweta
you,
and
Sajid.
Shraddha have been quite modest about their introductions. Shraddha also teaches game design, which is amazing. I mean, we had the opportunity of visiting Shrishti's School of Design, and it was a great experience talking about the real efforts that they're putting into nurturing a new set of gamers and game designers. That was amazing too. All right, so let's get started with the crux of this talk, right? And I'm going to put a question which I want both of you all to answer. What is the role of play in society? I know this is a big one, and we'd rather start off with the big questions. What do you think is the role of play in our society, and what are your experiences with it? Shweta?
Okay. Play, I think, is I believe it's not I think, I believe I breathe it. I can't even tell you what play means to me. I think it solves everything. I'm one of those people that believes that big world problems can be solved out through play. Our world is in a bad place almost on every front today because I feel like kids are not growing up playing and people are not playing enough. And play is not incorporated in people's lives as a way of life. It's always looked at as an after thing, or it probably doesn't even exist in the after. It's probably in the background somewhere, but it's not integrated in the way of our being. So, I mean, I believe in a lot what Maria Montessori had said long ago. Play is the work of the child, and if play is work, then toys and games are their tools. And it's kind of a way of bringing out the real you. For me, that's what play is.
Lovely. Shraddha, what about you?
To respond to that question, what role does play have in our society? We all grow up playing, and in Indian cultural context, I would say play is valued a lot more during our early formative years. You would see grandparents letting you play, playing with you, getting you resources which are useful for play. But as you start growing older, the focus in the Indian system is such that all of a sudden studies take a lot more precedence than play. So the reason like why gully cricket is not celebrated as much when you reach your teen years or something, so you have to struggle to buy that time back, and at times that is when you lose that control over your wantingness to play all the time. And this is me experiencing my own self, my own journey in terms of play wasn't tabooed in our family as such. Diwali time used to bring around a lot of play time for young kids and for elderly, different forms of play, etc. But as and how how the society is pressured with what your career is going to be, what you're going to study, studies are more important, that play kind of, that childhood is taken away. And it's only at the age of 25 then that whole interest rekindled again. And I was like, when did I ever stop playing? Like, how did that happen? It happens so seamlessly well that it almost seems staged, like play will slowly be taken away from you. You have to perform in the world that is outside there for you. So I think the role of play is now starting to emerge again in our current society, where, especially during this last couple of months and more, the awareness is more about what play brings to the development of a healthy, soulful, and a well-rounded emotional being.
Interesting.
Be
Shweta,
there is.
through Toy Bank, you work with a lot of kids from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, right? How is play perceived over there? And when they see the transformation, then like, are parents more encouraging to allow children to go and play at Toy Bank, or how is it?
Well, there's this question actually broken into time frames. I'll have a different answer for that question every time. So it's tough because play for the lesser privileged children. So Toy Bank's ethos, let me say this first, is it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men and women. This is a line, very powerful line said by Frederick Douglass. And as you see what it means, it's about building stronger, well-rounded, kinder, empathetic young people for the world out there. And play does that. So the way we design our play programs at Toy Bank for our kids is entirely attending to the social, emotional, even the cognitive side of things for the kids. It's tough to articulate and explain this to some of these parents of the lesser privileged children that we are working with, because the priorities, unfortunately, are very different. And play is a luxury. If they have extra money, they'll probably go and buy food or a pair of shoes or an extra pair of clothes, maybe. It's very, very different, the priorities. To contextualize this as early childhood mental well-being, the relevance, the significance of creating well-rounded young children and play molds them, it's tough to explain to these parents. So guess what? We don't explain it. We get parents and teachers to get involved in the play sessions. Feel it. Walk through this. In like 5 minutes of playtime, you'll forget all your problems. Right? The kids, that's what our kids face. They're going through so much of trauma. And not everybody, forget about the lesser privileged, right? Even the affluent people don't talk about some of the mental health issues they're going through. It's always shoved under the carpet. No one wants to attend to what they're really going through. And they just fill that void, or fill up that confusion with maybe more material things and maybe more crap that exists in the world, and sort of do away with actually attending to the real problem. So how can we expect our lesser privileged children to be mindful and aware of what they're going through and actually talk about it? So we don't. We instead play. We have our centers are actually called Play to Learn, Toy Bank Play to Learn centers. And we set up these play to learn programs of all kinds for our kids, where they just, for those few hours, get solidly distracted in a nice, constructive way, forget about all their problems. It's, put away somewhere. And in that moment, just for a blip, they are allowed to be children again, allowed to be in their elements, which is what play does. And because it brings out the best in them, when they do go back into their real life, they are better able to tackle those problems. They are better able to see those problems not as problems, but as how can I find solutions to these problems. They're better able to live their lives, actually. They're calmer beings. They're more receptive. They ask more questions. So when parents see this in their kids, or when teachers are seeing that these children are learning to learn better, the confidence levels are going up and asking the right questions. Who's doing that? The power of play is doing that, right? There is no need for us to sit with a textbook and teach these things. Play is naturally bringing out these elements in the kids. So I think the outcome is, I mean, to answer your question, Sajid, um, uh, uh, it's happening because of what we witness as an immediate outcome in the kids, and therefore they want to come back to schools. They want to learn more. The fear of coming back to school isn't there. It's not just about learning through textbooks and blackboard and grades and proving themselves that they're better than the other person. It's just about having fun and being joyful.
Yeah.
That's truly beautiful. Shweta, I would also like you to tell us that example where there were these kids who hated school, right? And they kept coming back just because they would get that 1 hour or 2 hours of play, right?
Yes, that's been one of our greatest exciting points at Toy Bank. Um, every time, basically, we work a lot with low-income private schools, government schools, wherever there are kids, shelter homes, government centers, daycare, shelter homes for kids. We've seen, especially in the schools, there was this thing on Saturdays, kids wouldn't come back. They would bunk school typically, or they would just avoid school. Of course, this also happened on many other days. And we also noticed that these kids were doing small odd jobs, maybe somewhere, to add more, maybe income to the houses. But on Saturday, suddenly we started seeing, because once we set up a play to learn center in the premises of these government schools, children would start coming back on Saturdays. So the teachers would come back and say, if they are not coming to learn in the classrooms, at least they're coming back to schools and attending these play sessions, which we are able to now, bring to attention to these kids on, okay, you can also come to the classroom and study maybe for a bit and attend some of these sessions that we are conducting as a part of your curriculum. But even the teachers have sort of cut some slack on that front, and even teachers get involved in the play sessions. So a lot of gender biases get broken, a lot of the happiness quotient goes up, teachers get involved. It's generally an environment of super happy learning space. So yes, the our biggest success has actually been that the attrition or the dropout rate has decreased big time. Some of the places almost by 100%. Children just come back to schools. So that's been quite exciting.
Wow.
That's
to add to
amazing.
Shweta's point, I think the role that facilitators play with the right resources, makes a hell lot of difference. So it's not just about setting up these spaces where you have like right resources, but also facilitating that play. What teachers are not able to do, even though all government schools also have this place called playroom, but there's nobody who teaches you or like facilitates play, and play is something that cannot be taught. The patience that probably Shweta and her team members bring in, the kind of what enables children to pick up and play and throw and break and remake. I think that bonding that brings out the best out of everyone is something that also places like what Toy Bank does also does across in different parts. And there are lots of other places where who have learned, the teachers, this is almost like training the teacher kind of a space where they learn by watching us also when we are in the field playing or volunteering, or like using play as a tool to communicate with the neighborhood, etc.
Yeah, in fact, it's interesting you brought that up, because the first thing in the program we do actually is train the teachers. If the facilitators and teachers are not bought into the cause of play and understand how to incorporate it in their own styles of teaching, then it's not going to integrate into the system. It's going to be one of those frivolous things. It is just play, nah? So what's the big deal? But we actually first get the teachers to sign up to get trained. There are like 2 day, 3 days sometimes power of play training sessions that Toy Bank team conducts with the government school teachers and everywhere. Once that is set, then actually after that step is when we conduct mock play sessions, where the teachers actually conduct these sessions with our kids. And then it's an auto mode, right? Because then it's not all the time that we had like 23 people in the team working with 56,000 kids. Exactly. How the hell are we going to do this and daily? So the teachers are going to be able to facilitate this, once they get a sense of it.
And probably that is how the program also becomes sustainable, when you enable another community member with the right energy and the right tools, and then you move on to the next community, and that's how I think that whole trigger kind of takes place. Even in my case, when Studio Clockwork goes to like for 6 weeks to Nepal or to Ladakh or to set up a library in a small community in Kutch, you
Yeah.
play, you leave things behind, but you also involve some of the elders who are genuinely interested in learning about what you do. So having
Yeah.
just 2 or 3 key people within that community, maybe not everyone would, some would mock, some would just like dismiss what you do, kind of a thing. But even if there's one spark out there, and
Yeah.
that kind of just like enables everyone else to start believing in the power, and then children also feel that they have somebody within their community, and then the language barrier also kind of gets taken care of. So there are lots
Yeah.
of things, but yeah, facilitating play with the right resources is bringing about the change.
Yeah, even with the government, I think with the success of the midday meal scheme, where we've heard about so many kids coming into school just because they get a meal. Maybe they can start with something like afternoon gaming, so that kids are excited about going to school and don't perceive it as just being education. But they're doing so much more, and maybe some way that they can start to gain so many more relevant skills that are required as opposed to just rote memorization or like textbook knowledge. Prepare them for the real world. Like vocational training is something that's really big, but can we actually get games and play to really get them skilled to do so much more? For example, like language or communication, social skills, so many other things that are relevant, like critical thinking, just to be able to think out of the box, or like strategize, just plan their way ahead. And I feel even through all the talks that we have with so many people, we say that as as Indians, we are really, really good with technical skills, but we come out really poor with a lot of the soft skills, a lot of the innovation, a lot of out of box thinking. And play can really change that. It can actually provide a medium for people of all strata of society to emerge out and actually fulfill their dreams. It's a great way to really upskill them.
I also feel what is
Yeah.
the right balance, just the right balance between games, educational games, and games just for fun, which build all these
Yeah.
other skills as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
So while not, I don't think every game needs to be connected to mathematics or English word building or something else. What is that
Yes.
right kind of balance within the school systems also that one should introduce these teachers to? Because parents, for them, the buying point is इससे क्या सीखने को मिलेगा? What do you get to learn from this game? Is
Yeah.
it about fraction? Is it about this? Is it about addition? So at times you also need to advocate, we as people, we as community also need to advocate about the importance of uh, games which are what do you call, devoid of any of these things, but there's
Yeah.
so much more that that game kind of brings in.
I think that goes beyond a lot of. I mean, that the beauty of play is that it's such a. It's like water, right? You can fit it into any container, and it can solve our
Yeah.
problems at all levels. And that's the
Yes.
beauty of play, right? I believe in this. Like, I don't know. I feel like the first word I must have said when I was born was play, because I I literally like drink and sleep and think of this beautiful magical tool of play. I think one of the key things that also, we are in COVID. It's a pandemic. The mental health situation, the world is it's really down in the dumps at this point. Um, and one of the key, to give you some numbers and facts, do you know that the crimes against children in India have increased more than 500% in the last 10 years, right?
Wow.
And 1 in every 5 adults across the globe goes through mental illness. And the depression levels is at an all-time high. Almost in India, the percentage of young adults that are not in the best of mental health spaces versus the number of psychiatrists or mental health therapists that exist, it's such a skewed number. There's like the
Yeah.
ratio is so scary. There are hardly any number of counselors to attend to the volume of problems that exist. Reason why I'm saying this is, I mean, to add to your point, Venkat, what you just said, I think there has to be a policy level change. I don't think this is just now anymore. I mean, it's gone the days where we can think of play is great for learning. Of course it is. If we
Yeah.
are behind in India, I feel We are talking about things which are a little outdated, but chalo, we have to do it. Karte hai, let's do it. But it goes beyond that, because we are always playing catch up. Play attends to so many aspects of the mental well-being of kids, right? When you talk about, I'll give you an example. There's this research scientist, and he's one of my favorites, Dr. Stuart Brown, and he was a pioneer in the whole research of play. He has done a ton of research on criminals. Like, I'm talking about serious level murderers and criminals. So there was one very famous case in 1966 of a murderer named Charles Whitman. He was 49 years of age. I don't know what age he was, sorry, but he killed a lot of people. It's called the Texas murder, and it was a very famous murder. Again, a guy who's very well trained, come out of I think he was in the Navy, very disciplined, blah. One fine day just goes up on this Texas tower, picks up his gun and shoots about, scores of people at random, no reason. Traces back in the research, and every research starts to Dr. Stuart Brown goes back to the lack of play, the lack of play, the lack of play in early childhood. I mean, when anybody grows up, in any child grows up in a space of violence, in a space of discrimination, and today we're talking about so masses of people migrating, whatever the reasons are, environment changing all the time for these kids. There's confusion and chaos in their entire childhood. So they say that, I mean, research has proved that as these kids grow up, the chances of them becoming violent themselves, because it's normalized, it's normalized in their early childhood. And even if you see in the current situation, some of the tools that people are using is what? Play to make them come back to who they are supposed to be, children. So that the lesser, as they become young adults, they don't normalize violence. And play sort of brings out these aspects of emoting, or speaking out, of being yourself. So I feel like it attends to, there has to be a policy level change. I mean, because play attends to so many levels of, it's a solution for so many things. We are still talking about such basic levels, actually. And if anything, actually, conceptualizing games, making games as a way of our lives, play as a way of our lives, as a being, it should be normalized. It's like you're talking about climate change. We've been seeing deterioration for what generations, right? Abhi kya hai? I mean, now we're talking about it like, oh my God, it's raining in October. Of course, I mean, we've been jacking up the environment for the last so many centuries and decades. It's the same case with children and their mental health and well-being. Why are there more criminals and crap happening out there? Because they've just not been catered to at the right time with the right tools. So I think there has to be a policy level change across the world, especially in India.
So the right to play is the policy level that probably one should be also talking about. There are other rights for children and women, but I think right to play is another kind of, there should be an agenda right through and through, and for across all economic stratas, definitely.
So it's there, right? Right to play exists. Right to education always was there. There's been so many people, every person in our country, you tell him about right to education, RTE, sabko pata hai. Everybody knows RTE. And you know that you put your school in a child in a school, it's free, and all of those aspects. Why don't they know about right to play? It's a fundamental aspect. But I'm thinking that instead of complicating it to that, let's just normalize it. Let's integrate play as a teaching tool in schools, as a therapy thing for children going to therapy. I mean, there is play therapy, but can we just normalize it?
This also brings us to the point of like maintaining public spaces where not everybody can afford like a park or like a neighborhood area, but there's so many public spaces which are not maintained well, which have swings which are broken, which are probably dangerous, but then who takes up the charge of like upkeeping them, kind of a thing. Even in Khidki village in Delhi, when I was working with Khoj, if you go to neighborhood to do your research bit, play with children, play Stapu, there are dead ends to roads, but there's so much traffic that it's not safe space to play. When you go to a park, the neighborhood, some uncle or some auntie would be like, यहाँ पे football नहीं खेल सकते, यहाँ पे ये नहीं कर सकते, यहाँ पे वो नहीं कर सकते. And then that leaves children with still no further space to play.
Yeah.
So while the right to play is something that's out there, but still then having somebody within your neighborhoods be vocal about the spaces, the public spaces as well, which can be accessed by all children specifically.
So what are some of the other practical solutions that you think, like for so many things in India, getting corporates involved, means greater funding, means greater involvement, greater awareness. When we get these big industrial houses to say that, okay, part of our CSR, we're going to be maintaining these public spaces. Or for example, to say that, hey, we're going to be going into educational institutions that have these game design courses, pick up people so that we can create these games, toys, play areas for kids to, so we almost normalize that discussion. It becomes part of an actual profession that you can take up. What are some of these practical things that you think could work? And this is out to both of you. And Sajid, you too, if you've got some ideas.
So Indian academics, like when we say we are creating, nurturing more minds who are learning how to design games or be game designers, the first challenge that I probably see here is people come with the mindset of AAA games. They were born in an era where they were born with PSPs in hands and stuff. So when you see these people, young 18-year-olds coming, they're not thinking about play. They're not thinking about games. They're not thinking about toys. They're thinking of making AAA titles. The first thing that you, as an academician, want to do is whitewash that. Get them to unlearn. Get them to play more. Have only played one type of game all the time, and your struggle with them is to get them to play more variety of games as game designers, not be biased. Create for everybody, not just for one set of people. Otherwise, then it would, and it's a longer thing. Like I think 3 years is too short a time for a technical program to create or to nurture such aspiring practitioners. And learning to be a game designer does not come out of an academy. It is something that you want to invest in as a career path, come what may. And you'll only know the more you travel, the more you play, the more people you meet, the more different kind of people that you meet. Be open to learning yourself. So it's quite a challenge. Like being game designer or studying game design is no fun. Similarly, like playing games is a lot of fun, but designing games is a great challenge. Like there's so much that you're trying to like solve and resolve, and Sajid and Venkat, you definitely would be agreeing to this. It's definitely not fun, but I take pleasure out of it. So sorry, I'm also losing track of the question here, but yeah, creating more people who are designing or learning to be game designers. The first thing that definitely should be is to widen their horizon and their understanding of play. So I'm talking about people who are almost our age, in our mid-age group. They are the ones who still are hanging on to their childhood nostalgia, and they bring a lot of that entertainment value or that kind of nostalgia into their games back. Why do we like playing certain games of a certain genre? Because it's related somehow to some of our like childhood memories. But for this current generation who would now become designers, it's very important for them to study 12 years old. What cartoons are they watching? What do children do? So while they're still young adults, for them also to study even younger group of people by participating in these communities where probably volunteer with a place like Toy Bank. If you want to be a game designer, you have to volunteer. You have to be out there. You have to study people. So you have to be a counselor. You have to be a therapist. You have to be out there observing people. So I think there should definitely be a module that focuses only on your observational skills and how do you take notes, how do you observe. So playing and making games will come automatically is what I feel. It can't be taught. It's something that you are gonna imbibe, and you're just buying yourself some time in a school when you come to study game design.
So I agree. I mean, that makes sense. I also have like say, I think there are like two things I feel. One is, doesn't matter who you are. Are you, if you're a, like a builder of buildings, or you're a anything, like it doesn't matter what profession you are. If we could just make like the child the central figure of your story or whatever you're doing with your profession, whoever you are, that it really doesn't matter what profession. But if you're able to kind of make the child the hero or the central figure, and therefore build everything around that child, I think we'll actually manage to solve out for some very fundamental human problems. We are always very commercially driven. So the first thing that anybody thinks about is how much will I make? What kind of numbers can I show? What are those big jargon Excel sheets with big fat numbers that don't fit in a cell in order to prove where you will be in 5 years or 10 years? And then the entire core focus is just gone, because then you're putting the pressure on yourself to do that, but not actually why you started this in the first place. Where did that thought even come? I feel like if you're able to stop commercializing, or the only thing was commercializing, that will happen. Now, paise aayenge, money will come. If you do things for the right reasons, the reasons have to be really strong. And I think this holds true for every kind of business and everything. I know I sound a little crazy when I say this, but I think those are the norms we all have to break. We have to, coming to the space of play and the question in context. The second point I also very strongly feel is understanding that, how do I put this, right? For me, I come from a space where I don't want, like, how do I put this? I want play to be a very big aspect where there are policy level changes and play is a way of being and everything. But at the same time, I'm afraid that if that sort of becomes, in say the objective or the goal, then immediately, before you know it, commercialization around it quickly starts, which is going back to my first point, right? So it's like, it needs to percolate. It needs to quietly seep into everything that we design, everything that we build, everything that we do. There has to be a play element or a play method or a play approach. It has to be like, do we say I'm breathing oxygen like every time I'm inhaling? Do I keep saying that, oh, I'm so grateful, thank you, oxygen? It's like that, right? Play is like that. It needs to just be there. If we make it so obvious and so conscious, and like this happened to education, right? I mean, everybody knows 100 years ago, just a little over 100 years ago, women weren't allowed to get into schools. There was a big fight for getting women into schools just 100 years ago. And it's such a crazy thing to think that, imagine if we say that, oh, you are a girl child, you can't go in school today. If we say this today, we'll get backed by anybody on the road if you say this, right? It's such a stupid statement to even make. And this was just 100 years ago. And then look at the education spectrum. How much of commercialization, and it's been ripped apart, where the core aspect of what we wanted to build out for is just gone, right? Or is going. And isn't play supposed to be, I'm very scared that it shouldn't happen to, while play is so important, that it completely loses the character of why we are fighting for it. That little subtlety needs to, so I don't know how you do these things. That's my space.
Completely get
Adding to
Shweta's
your second point, adding to her second point of like finding the right patrons and partners when it comes to us being involved with games. If there's somebody who's there for money, I don't think making money is a bad thing, or having wanting to make it's a bad thing. But finding the right people who believe in the power of play or what you're doing, finding the right patrons. Because there are people who will come and they'll be like, oh, you're sitting on a golden egg. I know I'm sitting on a golden egg, but your idea of approaching this thing is way different from the ideology where I'm coming from. So I think most of the times it's also, for me personally, it's about finding that right match more than the person. I think finding that right organization or other people who are doing a similar kind of a thing.
That's exactly what I was going to talk about, Shraddha. So I've been, I've seen Toy Bank's journey. I wouldn't say right from the start, but somewhere close to the start. And the kind of people or adults that hang out or support Toy Bank, people from all walks of life. You have actors, musicians, singers, like well qualified people and who's who of India, I would say, right? And it's beautiful to see that they actually live what Shweta talks about, the power of play. They live it. So whenever we attend their meetings or volunteering sessions, it's just amazing. Like they are all children over there. You know, you don't feel like they are adults, and that's what I feel like as well. And that's one of the reasons why I truly believe in what they're doing, and you know, I would always support them.
So I think there were three very, very big points that came out. I think, Shraddha, what you mentioned was that, listen, you know, the idea of how people are trained to create games or create toys or create play areas, whatever. It could be an engineer, a civil engineer making, you know, a play area, or builder doing it, or it could be that game mechanics or toy designer who's making that small toy that's going to be played by a child at home. That perception and the tools, or, you know, the knowledge needed to do that needs to be, you know, also understanding what the end user is. So that's the big thing that they need to learn. Shweta, I really like your point where we need to tug both ends of the rope. So I like to think of it as humane capitalism, and the word humane comes before capitalism, where, you know, instead of just reaping profits and not thinking about the human side of things, we need to first empathize with the person who is possibly going to be giving you those profits, right? And without actually reaching into their pockets and, you know, taking out all the money, we need to improve their way of living. So I think that's really important. If corporates begin to think about, listen, first I want to improve society, and through that, if I'm able to benefit myself, that is the secondary option that I get. So, you know, the whole idea of profit through with a conscience becomes very important. And the third, I think the most important of, you know, the lot is the perception of play. We need to change how people actually look at, you know, play. Like, we don't want parents to say that, "Acha, abhi khel raha hai, abhi pad raha hai." That we don't need to make that distinction. It can be okay for them to play and study at the same time, or, you know, to understand that, listen, exams are going on doesn't mean that you cannot play. Nahi, abhi mat khelo, exam chal rahe. You know, that is something that we're distinguishing and telling the child that you cannot do this because this is more important. And making play a normal part of a child's life, of an adult's life even, normal part of the human way of living, I think is the key change that we need to bring about. So all 3 points are great ways to think about it.
Yeah.
Have you two come across, other than of course what you do, Shraddha, for you at your school, and Shweta at Toy Bank, have you seen more practical applications of how play is used? Like, I know I met this guy, Shraddha, and you were there that time. They used gaming as part of introducing policy change. So they were explaining the examples of the problems through play, and they were designing games and trying to tackle those problems through games.
Yeah, so I remember
You,
Bharat
yeah.
from Fields of View,
Right.
who have been really using play in the policy change space, and creating these games to be played by people who make policies, bringing them in. Again, roping in adults to understand what the power of play can do by simulating.
Yeah, so in your question was basically about how it's practically also being used in the in say our play to learn centers, right? Yeah, I think what's super fascinating is when we train our teachers, what are we training them against? It's really funny. So the first couple of hours is about breaking the ice conceptually on what is the power of play, because these are also first generation learners themselves in most of the cases we're working with, who have you know, gone to school, educated themselves, and now we're saying, you know what, you have to incorporate play in the way you teach. So like, ek to, like, we are studying, we are doing all of these things, and we want our kids to like play and only stay focused, study and only stay focused on studying and get good grades and finish schooling, go to college. Now what you're saying, play, because so we have these crazy arguments, right, with them, because it's like, yeah, but who said it? They're two different things. Nobody said they're two different things. In fact, if there's an exam tomorrow, make him play more today. Nah, it's not about how, you know, the question is not about, and this is what we really push in the teacher training, is about a part of solving problems is to understand the problem itself first. Nah, it's not a question answer that you by hearted. That is the question I studied in page number 49, and now I'm going to, this is the answer to it. It's that you understand the problem and you're solving that paper actually like a puzzle, like a thought out, your critical thinking is happening, this is happening, that is happening, memory, blah, so many things. So we've actually incorporated the first few hours of the training goes in just breaking myths for our teachers. And these were the earlier days, I'm saying, about a few years ago. Thankfully, a lot of those things are going to change now as we speak. COVID has been interesting in that sense. And now I'll bring in this super brilliant National Education Policy 2020, which has happened. Very exciting times we're living in. I think the policy is great. It's calling out key words that we all have been using for decades in the play space. We talked about discovery learning and experiential learning that God only knows when. Finally, it's featuring in an education policy, but it's glad. Better late than never. Question is about how they're going to implement it. So yes, it's going to be a challenge that we hope these beautiful NEPs, policy level things are happening. Question is how they're going to be implemented. Thankfully, at least in our organization, like we have kind of trained tens of thousands of teachers now on the power of play over the last 16 years. And we have exactly said what the NEP is saying finally in paper as a policy now. We've been actually training the teachers against that. So the implementation, the teachers in many cases have already incorporated into their style of teaching. And it's again, the question is not about, like how Shraddha said, about learning math maybe better or science, breaking it down into subject level or curriculum, but it's actually learning to learn better. Your mind actually opens up to, doesn't matter what, but the fear goes down. Your fear goes down, you're automatically able to absorb that much more. And at a child level, it's super fast. We can see it in front of our eyes in like a matter of minutes. And that is how, at least in the Toy Bank Play to Learn centers, and we have around 450 such centers spread across Bombay and the rest of Maharashtra, we've witnessed and we've seen. Why are some of these partners so many years old? Because they want the Toy Bank Play program, because they're able to see other benefits of it. Children are coming back, children are learning better, grades are going up. So the standard commercial or standard results that they want to see are being seen by them. So honestly, we don't care. You want your results, you're getting a result, but we are also getting 20 other results along with it. That their kids are calmer, they are mentally more stable, they're more receptive, they're kinder and better holistic people for society at large. So many other things are going on the side. So yeah, I would say we've witnessed a lot of direct implementation of play and playway methods in wherever we work with. It's been quite exciting.
So Shraddha, just to reframe the question, which might help you a bit, at your college, like, do you get, do industries reach out asking for solutions for certain problems through play? Does that happen?
Yes, exactly. I just gathered my thoughts around it because besides game design as a discipline, there are so many other disciplines at Srishti designed specifically. So there's public space design, human-centered design, and other modes. Research is a big part of any of the projects that students take up, whether they are hypothetical or whether they are in a live setup or whether it's real time. So their approach of breaking ice, like coming from a filmmaking background, it's so important to create that bond with people that you would be participating, who would be participating in your research. They are not just users, they are participants in your research. How do we frame questions, or how do we co-create with them? When you go out to a public space, you're not making something for them, you create with them. So those kind of ideologies ke liye bhi, for those also, there are students who would approach you, Shraddha, how do you think I can work around on a game which can help them understand how to transact money? These are women from XYZ community. They've never worked before, but in this livelihood project, we need to make them understand how the banking systems work. So the idea is either you give them written notes or like some clinical kind of a thing, or you get them to engage in these smaller sessions which are facilitated by somebody like you, and who have a tool which is actually a game which brings in the best of Jaipur or the best of Monopoly, but not in that way, but in a way that they understand the concept better. So that way, there are lots of different other disciplines who try to learn and incorporate designing games in a way that it can be applied for its end use, especially to train or in many other ways.
I'd also like to add a little thing.
So go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add a little thing that, so I don't know if you all have heard, and if not, then you should look it up. There are these research papers, this is called as the annual status of education report. It's called the ASER reports. Every year there is these, and these are very tough to do and also done at a very small budget. These actually spell out a lot of the learning outcomes in children. So the latest, I mean, there's one in 2018 that specifically called out that a grade 5 student couldn't do a read English of a grade 2 student. Got even simple division of a grade 2 student not able to do by a grade 5 kid, but they're like moving up grades. But what are the learning outcomes? Really, really poor. So while this ASER report calls out the realities of how our children in India are learning, and some of the solutions it interestingly calls out is children have to learn through a playway method, because that's how they will, look at that. I mean, it's been going on for years. People have been saying this. So, I mean, we are talking about something which is, which has to be done. There is no other solution. It's not like this is better than that. I mean, this is the only solution. So it's about how we, whatever, like in Shraddha's case, how they incorporating it in, say, design thinking, designing, or whatever solution-based approach they come up with. But what is it? At the end of the day, we're incorporating the whole power of play and playway methods in whatever we're building out for, which is the only solution.
So literacy versus comprehension is where it comes to. While a lot of people can read or write, but if they do not comprehend, then that is of no use. People knowing how to do things, but they do not understand it. So knowing about something and actually imbibing it in your practice becomes like two different things.
So in fact, this is one of the 21st century life skill parameters. And it's not being met with at all. I mean, we have put all of the 21st century life skills. How is it going? How are we going to get there, right? And one of the things is what Shraddha just said. I mean, this whole aspect of what we are learning and what we are doing are actually very well connected.
We see this problem sometimes, like when testing our games, and because we mostly design around mathematics, we realize that the problem isn't the aspect of solving maths, but rather sometimes even comprehending the language used over there. So what we do is now we started giving vocabulary and trying to explain certain words, terms, and even creating videos around our gameplays and stuff. So it just makes their life a bit easier. And then the whole, I mean, we don't know, like sometimes kids say, hey, I hate maths, but like, why do you hate maths? It might be the person who is facilitating, it might be them not understanding the language behind it. And we hope like these things might, just encourage them to take up mathematics.
And to add to a point that Sajid is mentioning, when we do a lot of research, we work with parents and we do our testing, we hear parents say also, listen, maths I hate, I fear maths. So now that is something that has systematically been built over the years, and if you really go back to it, it's like, children struggle with percentages, which means they struggle with fractions, which means they struggle with numbers. So it's like foundation by foundation. If, the core is really weak, everything about that, ratio and proportion struggle. If you're not good with fractions, you're going to struggle with ratio and proportions. You're going to struggle with percentages. You might struggle with the averages. And then it moves further and kids go to, let's say, standard 8 and they go like, I fear maths, I hate maths, I'm not good at maths, I'm going to drop it. That becomes a real problem, because you shouldn't fear anything that you're learning, right? You should, I mean, that's the core thing. As human beings, we are able to learn anything at any age, and we really need to believe that. And it's just that we need to find the right methodology, we need to find the right medium to learn. And I think that's where play comes in so well, because the first aspect that a child sees when we put our games out there is, Arey, this is fun, I'm going to enjoy this. We see average learners with like, really above, probably the top 1% of classrooms sit together, work together. And at one point you might find an average learner even, exceeding what is expected of them, winning a game, and suddenly that confidence builds in. Like, Arey, I thought I was bad in maths, but now I'm winning. So that change really makes a difference to the way that a child thinks. We've had people come and tell us that now my kid before an exam says, why can't I play that game to study? Why do I have to do a worksheet or do something like that? And that's great, because you want to remove that fear, you want to remove that stigma that says that listen, I'm not good at something, or I can't do something. You really don't want that. And I think games really empower them to think that.
I
Yeah.
think kids can stay at home and parents can go to school for all the learning. That is what I strongly believe in. The education system can be scrapped in terms of percentage that you get in school. I think it has switched to grading system, but still within the
Yeah.
family also, if cousins are talking, it's almost always about how much did she score in science? How much did she? Why do you have to ask such questions at all? What is the whole idea? Is it gratification for the kids or for the parents? So I think
Yeah.
kids can just do fine without going to a school, and they learn what they have to and when they have to. So yeah.
I think we've also, we've sort of, I don't know how to, I try to frame this, but we've tried so hard over the decades, centuries as human beings to sort of templatize everything. Like everything has to be templatized. Everything has to be designed for a preset container kind of a
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
boxed, right? But we are the container, yeah. I mean, that we
Yeah.
have forgotten. We are the container. We
Yeah.
want to be, children are being forced to be put into a container, but this is a container, this is the dimension. This, it's so dumb, right? The human spirit has been curtailed. I mean, the
Yeah.
whole beauty of being human is actually to feel, to be resilient, to breathe, to be free, to be a lot of things. I mean, we put so many conditions, and it's like we're like this now, all of us. Everyone has to be fitting into this. How
Yeah.
can that happen? Yeah. And how can we? And we're also, look at the situation we're in. We're in a pandemic. What
Right.
actual time to speak about something? I hope in 7 months, if we couldn't get some aspects of the way we've all been living our lives in the last so many years, then it's a waste of a pandemic, I feel, because might as well, forget it, get the virus, die, or, suffer it. Because I feel like we have to learn, there's a massive life lesson that is happening here, isn't it? And
Yeah.
who are also the happy people, who are the people who are in their natural elements. I remember this book I read, it's such a, I'm sure you guys have heard of Sir Ken Robinson, somebody I really, really follow and believe in. Such beautiful TED Talks he gives, and sometimes when I get completely lost about things and things I hear from the world, I sit and listen to some of his conversations and his
Yeah.
speeches, brings back the reasons of why we do what we do. I mean, to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
in your element, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Sajid, you are one of the guys I really look up to, and you're amazing. You do such crazy things with what do you do? You're playing. You're jumping
Exactly.
off planes. You're playing, and that centers you. That defines a lot of who you are as a person. You bring that kind of experience to whatever else you do in your life. That's what we want, Rakesh.
Yeah.
You're in your elements. That is what
Yeah.
is, play can do for so many of our kids, is make them normal and natural as human beings should be. But
Yeah.
after that, what do you want to do is completely a free will and your choice. But can we
Yeah.
at least be free to think in a way that is not restrictive in nature?
Right.
I feel like those are very fundamental areas of us, and in everything, in every aspect of whatever we do.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think what play does is it builds curiosity. It makes you, you play a board game or you play any kind of a game, you're constantly thinking about it and what would you have done back there, or what will you do the next time, right? So there's a lot of subconsciously there's a lot of thinking happening in your head. At least from my example, it's make me highly observant, and I try to apply that in my job as well. I'm constantly observing things right from natural, like nature, to human beings, and I try to use that even in my animations. I try to use those characters in my storytelling. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those were two points actually that came out in a few other talks that we've done. One thing was metacognition, right? How do we really reflect back? How do we actually think and be like, okay, I did that, or what was the purpose of me actually doing that? Figuring that out, I think that has a big impact to society. When a lot of things that we do every day, if you just step back at the end, we reflect back, or we think, okay, why did I make that move, or what did I do today that really made me react in that manner? I think a lot
Yeah.
of things can will be solved from that purpose. And games give you that thing to do it right then and there, right? Hey, listen, yesterday when I was playing football, I passed it to him instead of that. Can I change that tomorrow? Or like, hey, I made that move in chess where I took out the rook instead of that pawn. Could I have done that differently? And that really creates this new pathway in your head or in your mind that goes like, hey, next time when I do it, I'm going to do that differently. I think that's something beautiful that comes out of play.
I'm always thinking of strategies to beat Venkat in this game.
I just hope Sajid doesn't jump off a plane and lands on the ground and goes like, hey, I could have done that differently. That's not good.
Knowing Sajid, you
the
never
way
know.
of also learning is repeating your learning. Like through games, that gives you that ability to keep doing something again and again and get better at it. Because in real life, then you do something, you make a mistake, somebody comes and like screams at you or something, you're very scared to do that again. And play is a safe space. The magic circle that we call is such a safe space. It's and making it normal to lose a game and observing children and gauging your smartness in terms of whom do you want to beat, Shraddha? Do you want to like play smarter with your 8-year-old niece, or do you want to go easy on her so that she's encouraged? To gauging that parameter also when we are facilitating play is something that I've learned over the years when I'm with Studio Clockworks. We are trying to build communities around games and telling people to empathize. It's okay. It's not about winning at the first place. Play to learn. Do not play to win is the mantra that we like really stick to. And just bringing these conversations up around the table when we are playing a simple board game. And it's okay if you do not like a game. There's plenty of others. So as somebody who conducts a lot of these play sessions, it's very interesting to observe us having this repertoire of resources that you can just like pull up. Hey, I know just the right game that would lift your mood up, or just the right game that you want to get this kind of challenge or that kind of challenge. So, which with also, I'm sure working with communities really helps you get that sense of like, I know what can work. And if it doesn't, we are okay to accept it as well. So I think that's amazing.
That's interesting point and interesting start to a conversation also, Sajid. I think earlier, at Toy Bank, so it's interesting to see how we've also like changed the way we use play because we want to attend to different types of problems, right? So, okay, we'll use play like this. Okay, we'll use. So in the beginning, it was what you just said about safe space. We work a lot with communities and children that are growing up in really, really tough terrains. Like, I mean, these are spaces where child sexual abuse is rampant. There's domestic violence. It's ridiculous the kind of stories we hear from our kids, and it's heart wrenching. I mean, there were times I would talk about this, and while talking, I would break down because how can a child even face these things, right? Today, I'm like far better in my headspace because we're learning to deal with it. But we talk about wars going on. There's so much going on in our backyard, right here in Bombay, or it just around us. So in the beginning, we used to use play to create safe spaces. We used to only work in partnership. I mean, we still do. That's a principal approach we take at Toy Bank is we only work in collaboration and partnership with an existing entity. Could be anything, government schools, shelter homes, daycare, crash, whatever. We never principally went to children on the streets. We never did. Either they were living on the streets, yes, heart-wrenching, heartbreaking, want to do a lot for them. But we thought about this really, really hard, and it was a tough decision, but we took it. And I think it was a very good thing we did. If they're on the streets, they're getting everything for free. People are giving food packs, half-eaten food packs to them. They're getting some fancy food, maybe from fancy restaurants, somebody's eaten a half pack, which I think is really not nice. Second thing is they get clothes, maybe, whatever. So then what inspires and motivates these kids to get off the streets? Kids, I'm not talking about adults. And that's the most unsafe environment because that's where they get abused physically, mentally, verbally. And that's not the kind of, if you see the signals, the children are begging and they're coming to your windows, car windows. What do most of people do? They just do this. Abhinay, not now. Nahi chahiye, jao. We don't want to buy. They're only seeing our hand wave like this in negative. Go away is the message they're getting all the time. Go away. How are these kids going to grow up feeling loved, emotionally stable, wanted, cared for, not abandoned, and therefore will grow up to be a resilient child and a fantastic contributing citizen to our country? No way. And we point fingers and we say, oh, that person is a pedophile, this one is a terrorist, this one is a rapist, this one is a murderer. Yes, yeah, it's horrible. What
Yeah.
led them to that? What
Yeah.
got them to being such terrible human beings for the world?
Yeah.
It's unfortunate we don't pay attention enough to how our children on the streets are growing up. So we principally took a call and no, we will only make noise. We had magicians and clowns and storytellers. We had colorful rap toys. I wouldn't say games. These are toys that had an emotional value. A child would sleep and cuddle with a teddy bear, give it a name, make it his best friend. And, there's an emotional value to that toy. We used to give that individually to children to take back home, but only in centers, in places where we could say that these are safe spaces. So the children who were on the streets who wouldn't receive, their parents would come telling us, Didi Bhaiya, can you please give us? Mere bhi bache hai. I also have kids. Can you please give our kids toys? And it was so hard to say no. We would say, nahi, no, we will not give you. Can you bring your child to this center? Please enroll. Bring him back to you. You do whatever you want to do, but that is not the place for your child. Can the child be in a safe space? And you won't believe it, in the weeks that followed our distribution events in the earlier days, the registrations of new children enrolling shot up. Like I remember this funny call I got from a school principal, sort of funnily scolding me, saying, "Ab kya kar rahe ho? We don't have place in our school, but we want to take more children. Abhi mein kya karu?" Kind of like a funny problem, but scolding me and not scolding me. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? I'll get you more kids if you want. But thing is, there are people who want to help, but how do we approach the problem? How do we approach the solution? How do we solve out for permanently, not do some ridiculous temporary patchwork and say, oh, it's done?
True.
That's actually more damaging. Play actually
Yeah.
solves out for fundamental problems. Character building. I mean, those are big things that are happening because of this, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that play, the whole distribution model worked wonders. Today, in fact, to sort of say what Shraddha just mentioned is very interesting, is even when we set up our play to learn centers, it's not that we've just arbitrarily taken our games and just put. We actually
Right.
understand there's a lot of pre-assessments, need-based assessments that Toy Bank does to understand whom are we working with, what is the background environment these children are growing up in, what are already the kind of learning outcomes or gaps that may exist, and how can we therefore curate our play to learn centers with appropriate board games, play activities, playbooks
Correct.
to actually fill these gaps. They could be behavioral gaps, it could be any kind of things, but they are properly documented. We properly assess these centers. Then we curate the training sessions for teachers, because we also want to understand how open are they, to learning new things and concepts. We have to curate everything. So there's a template that's provided and everyone follows that. It's to actually mold it to suit the needs of those kids. We are actually wanting to solve out for a problem, not just do what we feel is right, but do what is actually required at the
And
center.
this is what also brings sustainability, the aspect of sustainability in the true sense, where you're not just hoarding things and putting them in a center, but this is the sustainable model where a lot of thinking goes into before implementing a certain model and learning new things from something that did not work out, improvising on it in your next step. Coming to that sustainability aspect of it, the idea that in India, coming back to the society point, how we perceive play, the only reason Toys R Us or Hamleys exist is so that people can buy birthday gifts, big boxed games for their kids.
Yeah.
That is my understanding. Every time you go towards the board game section or the toy section, it's the same things. Only uncles and aunties come there to buy something for their nieces, nephews, etc. I might be completely wrong. I'm not saying like this is the only reason people come, but there's just such lack of curation in these spaces. Although they are like these world chains and stuff like that, but there's no curation. There's no actual effort made to study their neighborhood. What a Bombay Hamleys would want different from a Kanpur Hamley or something. Now this is not just like cut copy paste model. Malls are there everywhere. Hamleys wants to open more chain stores. There'll be more people wanting to invest in something which is a toy store, caters to children. But curation becomes an important part. Sustainability of what do you want to bring to these spaces that would help you also uh, cater to a specific audience.
Yeah.
So even in my case, like when I'm thinking of games, I try to manufacture my games in small quantities and with local manufacturers. One of my things is also I enjoy production more than like selling. As a one person studio, I cannot do it all. I have realized this. I've tried it, but I came to a realization, Shraddha, maybe you don't have to do it all. Maintain your GST, sell your games, market them, maintain social media handles, and also think of new games while you're doing all of this. So I kind of refrained from it, took a pause, which Venkat very well mentioned. That pause is such an important aspect. The moment I realized I'm losing my fun part of it, I think that is where I stopped. I enjoy sharing it, what I already have. I stopped buying games, not at the. I realized that there's so many games lying on my shelf which haven't had a chance to be tabled, and that is unfair for those games. So I treat them as an entity, which feels bad. So I'm like, Shraddha, no more games till you actually get these tabled around. Or if you do not like them, then pass it on, kind of a thing. So sustainability in different ways, producing locally, not buying more games, or talking to other people, other parents about the kind of games they should see, the kind of quality that they should look into a game. One is right here. Buy a lot of games which are locally produced. So this one is from Kutch. It's a hand embroidered. So supporting local businesses who are creating games, kind of a thing. So many different ways in which sustainability kind of links with Studio Clockwork as well, and in general practice in lifestyle. Yeah.
I'm going to combine 2 points here that you made. One thing is about, let's say, the big toy houses like Hamleys, Toys R Us, or whatever. The other thing that we touched before was something about humane capitalism, and the point that Shweta brought about how we can really contribute back into society and actually provide a very safe space for kids. I think one thing that we should see, big toy stores and things like that, is when they sell toys, a lot of people, they use the toys. It's got a shelf life. I don't think kids really use toys more than 2 or 3 months before they jump onto a new one. Very rarely do you see someone holding a teddy bear for 30 years and still really nurturing it. But but what I mean is, if they can figure out a way, this is where the humane aspect of capitalism comes in, where we can be like, hey, you've bought a toy from us. Why don't you come back 3 months later, give that toy back? And can we actually give it back into society? For someone like Toy Bank, where we are actually giving it to, I really don't like the idea of giving someone a used toy, right? Would I really want it? No. Why should someone else get it? But in this case, it might just be helpful. If we can get something that is barely being used, still looks new, maybe packed the same way, give it to a child who really needs it. Someone who can really take it, and that makes it sustainable too. Instead of just throwing our toys and games and whatever we produce into landfills, we can figure out a way to use it endless number of times. For example, like the board games we create, the outcomes are infinite. It's not like, I could shut the board game, keep it aside, open it a year later, but the game still plays. It's not like I need something new, I need to do something different. Why we really need to, and that, from the top of the hierarchy, when we get these big toy stores that have got, let's say, a basket that says leave your old toys here, and we'll give them to organizations that will deliver it to the last mile, those safe spaces where kids really need them. I think that would really
That's a
make a
great idea.
difference. People are perceiving games. Parents will begin to see that and be like, hey, even if I can't go and give it to a Hamleys, can I at least give it to, let's say, my house help's daughter, or can I give it to my driver's son? Small things like that. And not only just give it, but get them to play also. Why not get them to play with my child? That is something that we really need to start to look at as society.
Exactly. I think behavioral change is what you're touching upon. It's not about just giving the resources or passing them down, but
Yeah.
the giving your time is the biggest thing that anybody can contribute, is what my strong belief is. More than anything else, more than money or resources, giving your time. If you can
Yeah.
take out 1 hour a week to just talk to people in your neighborhood, even if we live in these multi-storied buildings in Bombay and Pune and Thane and Bangalore, how much do you know about your neighbors? I look like a fool when I'm talking to somebody in the lift in my apartment, but I love making a fool of myself. I love taking my Othello downstairs and play and let children watch it while they're playing with their drone. So these are the observations I'm making, and I'm using this as my adda right now. Okay, I'm in a very nice place. This society, I can bring about a change, even if not to the rest of Bangalore, maybe where I am living right now. It can start with my own neighborhood for that matter. And slowly I've seen the magic happen so many times, all the time, always. Like, it just takes a spark to get the fire going, wala thing. Once you do it, there are five parents who come and talk to you. There are three kids who would come and inquire, what are you playing? And just that tap on the shoulder, just breaking that ice, just being visible on every Thursday or every Tuesday on a pattern which people can observe is something that's beautiful. And I think contributing your time to such endeavor where we are trying to bring behavioral change in the mindsets related to play in India, games in India, toys in India, and this whole perception. So I think we're all in this together and we are doing incredible bit for our own selves. Yeah.
So I think,
Shraddha?
Venkat, you brought up a very interesting thing, saying that I wouldn't want to give my second hand to, I wouldn't want it. That's so good because, so I'll tell you, we, in the earlier days, the only way we could, because we started this, I mean, I'm an engineer by background. So that the first 5, 6 years I had a corporate job and we did this as volunteers ourselves, like me. And when I say us, there were a whole bunch of strangers I used to work with. Every week when we used to do activities, there were different people coming in and different people getting involved. And I was the only one idiot in that whole thing. No, we'll push play, we will give toys to kids and driving it like mad. I was a 21, 22-year-old crackpot. That hasn't changed though in all these years. So, but it's fun. It was fun. What we used to do is we used to actually go to housing societies and we used to put up posters and we used to just put boxes, carton boxes, and say. And that time there were some little do's and don'ts in the poster, but we never really articulated and talked to anybody. And I was quite in those days shy to have conversations with people. Like, what am I going to tell them? We had no clarity. I just knew I needed toys, wrap them and distribute them and give it to all the kids. Then the whole recycling process started. We used to repair, recycle, sterilize. Soft toys used to be today, in fact, we have an industry machine in our office which sterilizes a lot of the soft toys. So that model of collection hasn't stopped, but it has diminished. In the earlier days, people used to give us rubbish. It used to be all about cleaning their houses for some festival, and which is actually why, principally, again, as an organization, we don't foster any particular religion. We do everything on neutral days. We don't do anything on religious days because we've realized that when our children receive something on a religious day, they believe because of that religion they're receiving it, and the whole purpose of what they're giving only is gone because it all becomes about a certain religion. We've completely stopped. We
So
just pick
many.
absolute national holidays and neutral days, and we say every day is a special day. Hey, this is. But going back to this whole, so we used to get rubbish. Then we stopped and we started questioning because we used to joke about it and realize it's not a joke. We used to joke about the fact that we are high level rubbish sorters in the back end. You know how funny it is? It's also very cathartic. And we said, oh, it's okay, we'll do it. I mean, anything for our children. But isn't that an idiotic thing to do? Why are people giving us rubbish in the first place? Are we here to clean their houses? So then started this whole sensitization model. We will not take your stuff unless you get sensitized. You need to have a behavioral change first. And we trained all our college kids, all the volunteers. And we have a CEO volunteers at Toy Bank. And the only way we're able to do things at Toy Bank is actually thanks to volunteers who are an extended family of everything that we do. We first got them. We charged them up. Like I used to go and speak to large forums every single day, colleges, school campuses, corporate. We started getting into corporate offices, housing societies. Sunday mornings get called to speak to about 50, 100 people. Doesn't matter. I enrolled myself. I'm not this kind of a person, but I enrolled myself into some sort of I don't even want to take the name here, but some sort of a forum where every Sunday they would all meet to do this sort of a kriya or a session. And I would do it because every Sunday I would get to speak to 200 different people. And more people will get to know about what we do. Karte hai, and I should take my car, my old bichara, it was a really old car, and I should dump all the connections that used to come. People would donate, and the quality of games started changing because I used to tell them the purpose of what is happening. And then over the years, we started realizing the pattern of. I knew what Bombay was playing with because all the same games only used to come. We evolved as an organization, and as we started doing better at our work, we realized that there's no variety only. Yeah, Bombay is playing with us, say, a Monopoly or a Game of Life or standard, and also affluent houses giving standard set of games. They wouldn't try anything else or what? There are so many beautiful games in the market. So then we started sourcing games. I went and scouted the wholesale market in Bombay, Crawford Market, very famous. It used to be my Sunday affair, not Sunday, Sundays used to be shut. I don't remember which day of the week, but that full day from morning to evening, Vikram and I, in fact, used to go and survey the entire market, look for all kinds of wholesale dealers in all kinds of board games. Because you also realize even in the wholesale that they were, there were certain types of games that certain wholesalers would give. Then there were very few people that had all the variety looking at play to learn. It was all about more about entertainment value versus actually learning through that game. So we became very specific to what kind of what exposure our kids will have, what are the images they're seeing. They can't be only Western world images. We're talking about children. We're working in remote areas of rural Maharashtra, tribal children. You don't want to show like a farmer in a fancy tractor wearing glares, and there are all these Western world images. A poor farmer is so like anorexic and impoverished in a way, and how can we show our children something which is not a part of their own culture? So the images that the games would offer is something we started curating. We started talking. We had many forums where we got a chance. I have gone and spoken to multiple forums. In fact, just before the lockdown at FICCI, had a fabulous session in Feb where I spoke to a whole hundreds of board game manufacturers and wholesale dealers from all across India to actually sensitize even this group that don't think about just money, right? Attend to the problem. You're in a serious space of play. Think about whom are you catering to? Why are you asking ladka hai? Why are you asking is it a boy or a girl? How does it matter? So lots of curation and behavioral changes. We go to affluent schools. Toy Bank works with dozens of affluent schools in Bombay, where we conduct sensitization sessions that go on for an hour. We tell these kids, why is play so important? Because for them, it's maybe a part of some volunteering, grades milega, ye wo. But really speaking, why are we here? Why is play important? Why do we do what we do? Purpose, blah. These young people become the spokespersons of play then. They understand because they also come to our play to learn centers. There's a lot of things going on in this. The bridge is built. The so-called old of haves and have-not. This whole differentiator of economic differences completely goes crash landing. There is nothing like that in play. There is no kind of discrimination. So our so-called affluent children are mixing with our center children, and there is speaking the same language and enjoying themselves as children should. Nothing to do with language just because he speaks English and this one doesn't. Nothing. They broke all of those things. So this behavioral, it has to happen at a large scale. I mean, one of the concerns I have at Toy Bank always is that if we don't do it at scale, we will never be able to bring about that change, that dent that the society needs. Whenever I have these forums, when I talk to board game manufacturers, I'm like, you and I, you might be doing it for your money. I'm doing it for changing mindsets, right? So people are able to come to your stores or buy. We are agnostic. We don't believe in any particular board game manufacturer. We're agnostic to manufacturers, obviously. We're more interested in what is the content our children are seeing and what kind of development gaps is it going to fill for our kids. That's all we're really focused on. And that's the qualitative aspect of board games we really look into. And it's been fascinating where many a times it's like, so they didn't think through about all of these things. Some of the questions we think is, I didn't even know. Why have I been asking ladka hai ki ladki hai? Oh, why have we been so focused on stupid things like this? When we should be focused on what is the kind of content and matter I'm putting up in my racks for our children to learn. I should talk to parents when they come to buy games that what is the age group? Maybe is he going to school? What is the kind of does he have tantrum problems? Is he a very diffident child? Is he struggling with making new friends? I'm saying that the kind of questions we start asking and therefore curating what the child should actually be playing with will break a lot of barriers. The board game manufacturers, the business as a whole, will cater to a very fundamental human level need. It's a win-win for all. It's a win-win for all. And what better space to be in than this, because you're actually changing mindsets from early childhood levels through play, through your board games, through what our children are going to be playing with. And isn't that fascinating? I get very taken by it's so simple and so powerful.
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely fundamental, and there's such bright future in this aspect. Like India being the huge country, the amount of reach, outreach that we all need to have as a collective, while I totally agree to Shweta's point of scaling up is so important, or bringing about that awareness in all different aspects is so important. We have touched upon the business part of it, where people who are manufacturing this, what quality and what kinds they should manufacture. And if there's demand for the same, where you put the right thing on the shelf and you also create awareness amongst the people who are going to be buying it and the people who are going to be using it at the end. All of this chain, if you start looking at it as a systemic design thing, India has a bright future, especially in the gaming industry. The reason why India or the cultural Indian subcontinent context is not there on games is because there's not been much that has been done. Being part of the Game Lab group, we all know like how much we have started discussing Indian content to be represented right. Why
Yeah.
should somebody from outside who does not understand the Indian cultural concept uh, be like banking on our this thing? And it's not about ours and thems, it's about right representation as well. So
Yeah.
while the bed is hot, academic is getting into the picture. One is trying to like help students unlearn about just AAA. There's nothing wrong in making AAA. Of course, that's very legit. The whole idea of bridging the gap between analog and digital,
Yeah.
boxed games, and something that you can play with a simple piece of chalk. Do you need these resources or can you create your own games? I'm a maker myself. The time when I started my journey in 2009, I did not have a single game and I had no regrets about it. All I had was curiosity, which you, Sajid, very well mentioned. A curious mind is what I had. And I began with a piece of chalk and collecting pebbles, black and white pebbles. I started with traditional games, learning about traditional games because I was like, oh no, I don't know how to play Kirtan. Oh, what game is this? Ashtachama, Pachisi, this, that. So parents like, yeah, we used to play as kids. So why did you not tell me?
Yeah.
They have no answer to that. And then I was like, okay, never too late to learn. Let's just pick it up now. So every time when I also used to travel for volunteering, I never used to carry a lot of like fancy games or like games to like leave behind kind of a thing. We used to make games, go for these evening nature walks, pick up pebbles, paint them, upcycle bottle caps, do something. Give children also a vent for their artistic practice and creative practice, taking the ownership. And when children create with their hands, children or adults alike, whenever people create with their hands, the kind of engagement and the ownership that you take for
Yeah.
that particular thing, the amount that you want to share, show, and tell is again something that I hold very important. Scaling up on one hand versus me wanting to do something really small with a tiny group of people with something really local are the two
Yeah.
aspects. Again, bringing about the behavioral change that we are trying to see in the society at a larger scale and also at like a very local level for that matter. So I think both these areas are also important and equally valid, and we need a lot more, hundreds of us, thousands of us to penetrate and like bring about that change in the next 5 years or 10 years perhaps. I think we've already seeded that long ago, and the result of which we are seeping now, we are like reaping now, sorry.
Yeah.
So I think that is where we are as a
Shraddha,
community.
Shraddha and Shweta,
Yeah.
because both of you are or have been entrepreneurs in this whole play industry, what message do you have to people or youngsters who are watching this talk as to if they want to get into this kind of business, either for profit, not for profit? What messages do you have?
And let's keep this global because I'm sure there are
Yeah.
a lot of people, not just in India, but everywhere. So
Everywhere.
we can speak from the Indian context and the global context. We'd like both.
You want to go for it, Shraddha?
Sure, I can go for it. My message would be to engage with people around you to begin with, especially start with your own families. Try to have days where you do not touch your devices. Try to have lesser screen time. Devote that 2 hours that you do not use your social media for something that you actually do physically, whether playing or making or just spending time with your parents, grandparents, friends, and neighbors, talking to them. That is the first and a very important message that I would like to give. Engage with real people around you is that one thing that I would say.
I would say two things. One is whatever you decide to do it for the right reasons. I think it's extremely important to understand why am I doing what I'm doing. And all through your journey, you have to ask this question. It's not just I will ask, I will think about this at the start, I've got the answer, now I'll do. Actually, it changes every day. So it's extremely important to stay in context and stay focused, be mindful through the whole process. And don't do because somebody great has said something to you. It's, you are great, you are who you are. Have some trust and faith in yourselves. And definitely, I keep saying this every time, everywhere I go, is be honest to yourself. It's not just about being honest. It's about being honest to yourself. If you're not understanding this, then read about it and figure this out, because this is a massive life lesson. If you aren't honest to yourself, you'll be honest to nothing else. So it ties in very well with this fundamental question. Therefore, you'll have an honest answer to why am I doing what I'm doing. So the reasons will come together. And the second very easy and a simple thing is, there are a lot of great ideas out there. But why underestimate yourself? If there is, you're convinced about something, you want to do it, make that idea great. It's possible, doable. You have to be consistent, not be fickle-minded that every day I'll change this. You have to be damn tight with following through. I mean, one of the things I have in my soft code in my house and in work is follow through, because that's half the times a lot of things fall out. If you've committed to something, follow through. There are a lot of frustrating moments, and there'll be a time when probably you're the only one believing in what you're doing and everyone else is telling you otherwise. Still follow through, because you have the reasons in place. I think that's extremely important.
Okay, I have really two questions, just very short opinions that I want. One's an opinion, the other one's something more. We've been asking everyone this question. First one is, where do you stand with traditional play, traditional games, and tech coming in? What's your position on that, Shweta and Shraddha?
So let me put it this way: play is play for me. So as long as there is, it's sort of, it's, how do I put this? It's not about ticking or as a checklist, but as long as the whole purpose of the fundamental concept of play is met with, it is collaborative in nature, it has to be engaging, it makes you a better person, it helps you ask the solid questions that sort of is very important for character building, and it's doing this subtly. It's not in your face, or it's sticking all of these aspects in a nice subtle way in the background. It's also inspiring and motivating you to the individual to get up and do something with his or her life or whatever. We play does that, right? So if it's tech, how does it matter if it is analog, like a proper sit down board game, a traditional way of doing things? How does it matter? I think as long as it sort of addresses some of the fundament, that was the genesis of play. That is the genesis of play. And as long as that core is not broken, the methods I don't think should matter at all. Play should do that to you. It should bring out the best in you. As long as we've not gone crazy in catering to, these are some statistics, some MBA person somewhere has come up with, some consulting body has come up with some readings. This is the right thing. This is how we go. It's all theories. It's great. It's important. Yes. But if we completely turn around and switch to just attending to those and not really listening and understanding what humans truly need, we've lost the plot over there. So as long as there is some proper balance in making sure the core doesn't change, I'm sort of okay with whichever. Doesn't matter.
Awesome.
So, Shweta, what about you? Where do you stand with traditional play versus tech? Is it more on the lines of what Shweta said, or do you have something different?
I'm on the intersection. I love them both. It also depends a lot on affordances that we guys have. I'm all for classic, but I'm very open now, more so because of being in academic space, of being open to what this other world is, because it has a lot more outreach, far better outreach as well, affordance as well. So when people are playing a Luma game on board versus buying an app for 37 rupees on Steam, you're opening up the world of better presenting such games on those platforms alongside indie games, alongside AAA titles, because this content also needs to be out there. So I am for both very strongly. So people who are too much into video games, I break that and bring them and introduce them to the world of the analog. And the ones who have not tried digital, I kind of balance that time out with starting with my niece. Okay, we played Othello. Let me introduce you to Potion Explosion on Steam or whatever. So this whole
Yeah.
idea of them clicking mouse buttons and knowing about technology and the fact that it also eases your setup time, it's more faster. You can do
Yeah.
synchronous play with somebody sitting in Gujarat. I miss my friends so much after having moved to Bangalore. But the
Yeah.
feeling of playing Istanbul on the app with other friends in your circle, I have been very thrilled about it. So this lockdown, I explored the side of the digital board games, and I think soon I should be able to write something on that line. So I love
Yeah.
both. I am for both. Classic is important, and tech is equally important.
And you mentioned the lockdown, so now let's address the elephant in the room. This is 2020 has been a black swan year. So how has COVID changed things, both for Toy Bank and for Studio Clockworks or Shrishti School? Like how has that really affected what you guys do?
It's been a very, very interesting 6, 7 months. I have loved it. Finally, I don't know. I mean, it's a very horrible thing to say, but I know it's been really hard for a lot of other humans around us.
Yeah.
Uh, we actually took this as we jumped on this as an opportunity. We just said that what better time now than to push play, right?
Yeah.
Because all along it's been about one of those many things and extra 1 hour maybe playtime karenge. But now what will
Yeah.
people do? Forget about children, adults, everybody, old people, everyone can play. Yeah?
Yeah.
We jumped on this like from the month of April only. We were like, we have worked like backbreaking. We have, it's been backbreaking hours of insane amount of work. Our
Yeah.
team just got charged up. We suddenly became content developers of amazing play at home, play to learn, play at home kits we started creating. We have, and we didn't, because our children may or may not have. First of all, I know that most of our kids, first of all, don't have phones, so they have to borrow their parents. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
even their parents' the phones of their parents are also very not smartphones, so they have very basic. So we just
Yeah.
straight away looked at WhatsApp and we started looking at content we created, which was very simple to use paper and pencil and solve out for, or use material in their house, maybe like rice grain, simple things that they don't have material stuff. Also, what an immediate thing we did is we had so many our play to learn centers were well stocked. So thankfully, before COVID hit, our replenishments of our games was already done in all our centers. It was the year end, so fatafat all the centers were already well stocked. So the
Yeah.
immediate thing our facilitators, our teachers locally did is took the games to all the homes of the kids. Now the
Oh.
challenge was we had 30, 40, 50 children at a time at our play center,
Yeah.
right? So it was easy to cater to them at a go. Now we're
Yeah.
talking about 30, 50 homes extra,
Yeah.
like, and have a multiply that. So it suddenly became like, oh crap, how are we going to cater to everyone in the houses? So the
Yeah.
Yeah.
volume of work suddenly just shot up. We are in about 450 support WhatsApp groups as we
Wow.
speak, and the numbers just increase by the day. We've
Yeah.
catered, we are working alongside 7,500 teachers and parents who are a part of these WhatsApp groups. So the WhatsApp group has become our play center, and
Yeah.
our activities get published over there. Our program officers are talking 35, 40 calls a day and doing like this desk research, what we used to do in field visits. They were actually deployed in specific geographies, and every day they would cover 6, 7 centers and conduct these sessions at physical pay to learn. That's entirely come on the phone now. So it's a video WhatsApp call or it's a phone call, but 35, 40 per person through the weeks and months. This has been
Wow.
happening, and we've been catering to the immediate on ground needs of these kids. What's happening? The kind of questions, we have a survey, we've got data, crazy data, so we keep curating the play at home sheets to address. The second thing we did is, in the second phase in the last 2 months, is we've changed the content to also cater to the learning outcomes, because one of the needs we started realizing is they're not able to attend these Zoom calls, these kids. It's
Yeah.
impossible for them to attend their classes. So one of the needs is that how can we align it to some of the school curriculum in the playway method in the approach that Toy Bank believes in, but maybe not so much so focused on being generic, but being very focused on school curriculum learning outcomes. So that when normalcy does set in, the learning gaps aren't much. You know, like for example, we brought our kids to say a learning level of say 7 out of 10. We wanted to maintain the level of 7, not for them to come down from 7 to a 2 or a 1. And that is what we are focusing on, regardless of how and what we've hired people, we've gone crazy, but it's happening like now over the months the rhythm is set, and it's like a well-oiled machine. Every day, 10:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., these activities are published, calls are being made, documented. They're using G Suite like crazy, so everything gets uploaded there. We've upskilled our partners, upskilled our team to use this level of tech in order to cater to using this better and faster and be more efficient. So it's been quite an exciting 6-7 months, and the agenda of pushing play forward couldn't have had a better time. Yeah, like it's really like really pushed that agenda like nobody's business. That's what the last
That's
6-7 months have
awesome.
been.
That's so energizing to hear. I have been on the opposite spectrum, being one woman army and doing my own stuff. I just missed people so much, my play group so much, Tuesday game nights, Friday game nights at Srishti, introducing in a physical space. I had really missed it. And without having like a very wide circle in Bangalore, especially in Yelahanka, I think I struggled through the starting couple of months. And later, after like a couple of months, I think I gained my energy a bit back to be in that mental state ki Shraddha, this is it, it's okay, like let's start exploring something online. So I had my very close friends with whom we would have calls every day. So just taking care of myself became like the very important thing initially, taking care of your parents sitting here. And slowly I started thinking about writing and blogging a bit more, or just drafting those things that have been pending for so long. So it also gave me that pause to reflect upon what will happen if things don't get back to normal. What if you're not able to go back to your Tuesday game nights or Friday game nights? And that is when I became more open to exploring the digital board game aspect of it. Because during this time, a lot of people knowing Studio Clockwork or coming from the Ahmedabad community, they would reach out to Shraddha. Hey, what do you think I can play as a 2-player game? What should I order on Amazon? So whenever people would get in touch with you for advice, I think I really enjoyed spending that moment with those people, giving them like suggesting them games, and just being sane around this time where I started getting back. So I would say I have recovered, and listening to Shweta, I think there's so much that can be done if you're in that right space with that right energy. And I'm trying to gain that back. So I hope this time is for all of us to learn further and up and onwards from here, kind of a thing.
I think one of the driving factors for me personally is I really mean this, sounds crazy, but I want to solve out for this well within my lifetime. I don't want to leave this I leave a legacy and somebody, that's bullshit. Yeah, exactly, right, Sajid? So, Abhi, it's now. It's just now is the time. Like I'm so charged, I can't tell you. So on other days I'm like this, but the minute it's like play and everything there's work, like I'm so charged. It's the one thing I really live for, and it becomes like a really purposeful thing, because if you want to really bring about change, we have to start and stop well within our lifetime. We have to solve out for that within ourselves. There'll be new problems, yeah. There'll be new problems, but let there be new problems. Nah, we're only talking about the old stuff over and over and again. How many generations? Let's end it once and for all. So I think play has that power. So we started a second program. In fact, this particular play at home, play to learn approach is going to be regardless of COVID. So if you see all our social media posts, also our hashtag is COVID or no COVID, play must go on. And that's really what has been our approach. Doesn't matter. It maybe needed a pandemic for people to actually give us attention. No problem. We are pushing. We started this buddy program. We've assigned our buddies, our volunteers because see, we have only 23 people in the team. We are working with 60,000 children now on a daily basis. It's not possible only to do that. Do the math. So, we have this assigned buddies as volunteers who are conducting play to learn sessions through the phone, through video WhatsApp, through maybe small this thing, and it's amazing how it's happening. It's amazing because what Shraddha you just said. I mean, a lot of people have faced that. They've bent down. They felt out of sorts, like what to do. Suddenly, like we started pulling them up and we started getting them. Hey, we need more hands on deck. Hey, we need more people. Can you do this? They went through it. Of course, we had a psychometric test and we did a few things in the back end to map the right set of volunteers with the kids, because our kids are like sacrosanct to us. So we don't allow anyone to randomly go and talk to our kids or meet our kids. We're very, very particular about their protection and stuff, right? So, but after all of that, a whole bunch of beautiful volunteers every day talk to our kids. There's a fabulous buddy program going on the side. I never thought we'd do all of these things. Pre-COVID, so these things are not possible only. Pre-COVID, we were in a whole jamela of different types of problems, which completely ended. And we're like, chalo, let's make the most of this now. This might have its own set of problems later. When is a situation where there are no problems anyway? But I like to have new problems. I'm sick of the old ones.
That's amazing. I think we've got so much of great content and so much to digest. I think it's been a great conversation. I think Sajid's got his own inputs, but I would like to say that it's been an absolute pleasure. The amount of ideas, inputs, practical applications and insights into what you guys do has been truly fascinating. There's a lot to assimilate, but I want to say one thing, that I'm really, encouraged by the passion that you guys bring into solving problems, using the power of play to bring about social change, right? And I think India is this wonderful cusp where we've got all these ideas emanating out of various pockets, but now we can actually reach out to that entire populace. And the fact that we can get our ideas out there and we can get them quickly, like I said, why leave these problems for a generation later or 2 generations later? Let's solve it now. These are good problems to have, and it needs innovative solutions. And I think the ideas that you've brought about today are really going to get Sajid and me to think a lot about how we create our games, how we engage with kids, how we engage with parents, how we engage with families. And thank you so much for that. And this has been an amazing experience for me.
And the way I look at it, play is such a universal term, right? Like, no matter which part of the world you're from, no matter what background you're from, what socioeconomic conditions you're from, what age group you are from, it's such a bonding activity, right? And I want this message to spread all across the world, and I'm sure it's happening slowly and steadily. And it just helps everyone in the ecosystem, whatever business you are into or whatever audience you are. And I think this concludes the talk. This session will be live on from 22nd to 25th of October, which is Spiel Digital. And we have many more sessions like these. Thanks a lot to Shweta and Shraddha for joining us. Please feel free to reach out. Do check out Toy Bank as well as Studio Clockworks. Yeah, that's it. Sajid and Venkat from Luma World. Shraddha, thanks a lot.
Thank
again.
you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. Really means a lot. Thank you. Keep pushing play.